So we're just going to go straight into it. And this is I'm going to pose some questions to the panelists after they've done their presentation, and then we'll do a Q&A with the audience afterwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Femi Akinsanya. I'm chair of the Save Our Art, Save Our Heritage campaign, which is associated with the Akinsanya Trust, looking after the Osun-Oshogbo Grove. I'm just going to quickly run through my slides, and hopefully I can base myself, trying to prepare context for hopefully our conversation later. I think I would like to start by exploring what is heritage. Heritage is a people's practices, objects, conventions, mores, and ways of doing, ways of seeing, representation, approach, and beliefs that have been handed down from past tradition. Heritage is therefore inherited by descent and passed on to coming generations in both received and evolving formats. Heritage invokes nostalgia about our tradition, history, and is effectively a major plank around which people's uniqueness all over the world have been defined. This includes our perception of pride in our ancestors, the level of achievement, their creativity, and the evolution, and our descendants and our own place in the community of nations. So for me, heritage is essential. Heritage is handed to us, and it is our responsibility to preserve that heritage and hand it over to the coming generation. As I said before, heritage is essential to a people's sense of identity and pride, and the art in the Osun-Oshogbo Grove is the ultimate example of the role that artists can play in preserving cultural heritage through social sculpture. This is Susan Wenger, the artist, the Austrian artist, with indigenous artists who created some of the images you are going to be seeing and who have been responsible for the Osun-Oshogbo Grove. Over a period of 40 years, Suzanne worked with a group of indigenous artists that she mentored, and they created, this what I like to describe as modernist sculptures in the natural environment of 75-hectare forest on the banks of the Osun-Oshogbo River. Now, this is very important. Apart from the art, the Osun-Oshogbo Groves have also helped in preserving, it's like an example in conservation, where intervention of artists can result directly in its preservation, conservation project. But for these groups, I'm sure that the Osun-Oshogbo Groves will no longer exist today. In times past, most Yoruba communities had forests like this on the outskirts of the town, where they had nature and they did a lot of things. But Oshogbo is probably the only example remaining today where such forest has not been converted, to use in terms of housing and all other things. So this is also very important to bear in mind. The government of Nigeria recognized the importance of the groves and handed it over to the National Commission for Museums and Monuments as something that they should, look after. Significantly, in 2005, this site was designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, and I think we ought to be very proud of this. Now, the UNESCO World designation was conferred based on the significance of both the art, which in my view is probably the most impressive contemporary sculpture installation in the world, and for its role in sustaining cultural tradition. However, as many of you probably know, and which is the reason why most of us probably have never heard or do not know about this group, those who know, people who are a little bit reticent associating with it, is because that many of us kind of link these efforts with traditional religion, which people think that in the modern world we ought not to be associated with. Actually suggesting to you, that a people cannot ignore their own heritage. A people ought to embrace their heritage, and modernism and tradition and our sense of being are not incompatible. In point of fact, the people that do not respect and embrace their own heritage cannot be taken serious in the context of a modern society. I think it is really up to the younger generation in particular, because my view is that people of my own generation, it is becoming too tedious to try to convince them or to persuade them. But I think the younger people have a responsibility to open their minds, and understand the purpose and the function of things like this. Okay. Now, but I would like to point your attention to what I describe as a more contemporary or recent example of where an artist can intervene, which is like a good example of social sculpture. Many of you know it, but you probably have never recognized it as such. But before I show you this new example, let me explain to you that many of you know about Picasso. He's one of the most celebrated artists in the world, and Matisse and all of that. The Cubism movement in art was inspired essentially by their interaction with African masks. And I'm showing you a few images where you can see on the left, paintings, by Picasso and the African mask example of what inspired him. And I think the examples, or the link is quite obvious. Okay. Now the reason I'm saying this is that I believe that the role of artists is to basically interpret and urge people to look at things, old things, old forms in a new way. And one of my concepts is that modern art cannot exist without reference to history and tradition. And all great artists, what they do is to show us a new way of seeing things that we have always known, but to take a fresh look. Now, this is the example of social sculpting in our own time. This is the Falomo Underbridge, which was created by Poli Alakide. I am personally aware of the very strong advocacy and the many battles she fought with officials of the Lagos state government before she finally found people who understood what she was doing. And this project was created in partnership with MOE Architects. And many of you will be pleased to know that this project is now being considered, for an award or consideration for the prize of the Aga Khan Prize, in social architecture. Okay. Now, I'm also showing you examples of some of the sculptures in the Osun-Oshogbo groups. Yeah. Okay. Which is just looking at the objects, from a different point of view. Now, these groves need to be preserved, and what the Save Our Art, Save Our Heritage campaign has been doing is to raise funds to find the artists, some of the original artists who are now dying out, only 2 of them.
I would walk around the groves around the West. So, traveling, I got to the groove. At that first meeting, I kept going back. And for me personally, growing up in this part, I had a basic disconnect between me and my traditions from the East. Beliefs, the whole belief system was a bit messed up for me. So for me, this was the connection. This was the first point of connection. So because I understand, I believe so much that identity, our heritage is the bedrock of our identity as artists or as individuals generally. So at a point I was looking for something to connect with, even though it put a bit distant. So going to these spaces, working in these spaces was like, it felt like home on one hand, but it also felt like a tool to make me understand who I was. First of all as an individual, then maybe as a creative. So I worked in these spaces, I went back to Oshogbo, like 13, 14 years period, and I spent a lot of time. I mean, not just even during the festivals. On daily basis, I go and spend a week in Oshogbo, in these spaces. I began to understand the whole folklore, the whole methodology around the Yoruba tradition, even though some I had personal issues with, but again, I understood its place and its importance in our identity as Africans, or as human beings, actually. So, now, that whole process led into this project, Missions of an Iconic Religion. And this project, basically, I made portraits of chief priests, diviners, in their shrines, in their space. Now, a lot of people I met in that whole process of going back, not all at once. I met them, they became friends, they became quite relate to it. So at a point, they were asking me to make images, not me wanting to make pictures, because I was so much in this space, even though I couldn't speak Yoruba very well at the time, but I was so much in touch with them. So this was given to me like a gift. You're here and make these pictures, you know. And what it did for me as an artist, it helped me understand the place and importance of these our cultures, our beliefs. Because I strongly believe as an individual, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And you know, we can understand that from what's happening with our youth these days and how a lot of things, social are messed up. So for me, this was the point of connection. And then coming back now to Lagos, you know, Makoko is one place I have, one of the first places I photographed in as an artist. And I've been going back after that. So at the point I got tired of the whole narrative, the whole story around Makoko, all slum, nothing good comes out of there. The government is always every year by year trying to find a way to throw them out. So I said, okay, I was tired of this. What do I do about it on the first hand? I said, okay, I started making some different kind of images about Makoko, portraying in different light. So I would go, I would spend time, hours, days, sometimes I spent a couple of times, make pictures. This is one of such days. I wanted to portray the Makoko of that anybody would love to be in, spend time in. So I created images like this on one hand, and also what is the economic importance of a space like Makoko? Now this is all the protests. Makoko, where you have the Opara sawmill, from this space, 80 to 90% of the wood used in the whole of Lagos comes from. So if the government actually takes people out of this space, what's going to become of the whole architectural art space in the town? Everything done here is wood here somehow, and so it's going to be almost impossible. So I was saying that what is the importance of this space in the scheme of things, in the economy of the country, of the state. So I made a couple of images like this. And we went further. In 2010, started 2010, we did a workshop. It was a 7-month-long workshop. So twice a week we went on boat. I and a colleague. Also, I as an artist, I believe in the importance of collaborations. I believe as an artist, I can only make a mark so far, but in a group we can go very far. So I do a lot of collaborations with colleagues of mine. So me and Otobi and Godwin, we embarked on this project. The idea was not necessarily to give back, because sometimes you think, what have I cost in the first place to want to give back? So it was first of all an art project. It was strictly an art project, you know. So we spent 7 months of our life, twice a week on boats, and we couldn't swim anyway. So yes, we could not swim. We had cameras straight to one and all of that. So we taught these 12 to 18 years old kids on photography. They had no knowledge. Most of them are not English speaking anyway. So, but after 7 months, we had 4 people that came out of this that were now telling new stories of their space. You know, this is all a protest for us. We were tired of this. We wanted to do something about it. So this is us now doing this project for 7 months. So 4 people came out of this. 2 of them got scholarships and got the university, blah blah blah. But that's not the essence. The essence is that falls of our work. And then to see the exhibition now, you have to park your big jeeps and your cars on the road and take a boat on the water and see them just pasted on the houses. So we brought all the big people to the slum to see the show. So it lasted for a while, and we got the show. Then also that gave birth to even us wanted to do more, because we understood we saw the impact of this. So we felt we felt the need rather as artists, because the other 2 guys are also artists, Otobi and Godwin. We said, okay, let's go further. Let's do something on a bigger scale. Probably, hopefully, we make more impact. So the essence of this was to we set up a foundation for art and social institution, to work with people that we felt were socially neglected in the economy, and people that probably didn't have a voice. You have anybody speaking for them and you felt, okay, there were no good goods. So what represents and eventually after months or a year of going back.
How much is the work that you've done there influence how you practice it? And how have you found the response of what you've been trying to teach the kids within that particular community?
I think I work in the group. Hello? I work in the group, even for us, even for me as an artist, has been an interesting learning curve because you go to a space and where you can't really communicate with language, you understand. But over time, of going back, you become almost part of the space, and that gives you major access to actually to create work in your own case. And for the whole period we were there, it was constantly trying to navigate a way with them, not just talking about the physical space now, their imagination, their thinking, because it goes beyond just teaching them something. It's like, it's like a thing about a new project you want to shoot. There are different levels to it. Fine, first of all, start with research, and you can't do that in isolation. You need materials from before then to actually start that journey. What has been done before then you go into the space, you now study, communicate with the environment, and at the end of the day, the impact was very good. This is not speaking from my point of view, from response we got, the impact was really solid, and that gave us impetus for even moving further to the prisons.
When we were talking earlier, I was mentioning about the Kenyan author who sort of moved away from writing in English to now just writing his own local dialect. This idea of, obviously we're in a very Western-centric view of the world. Some of the work you showed that inspired the museum comes from a well-known tradition. So this idea of how do you bring the world into the space? So maybe we could talk a little bit about that for the museum.
I actually don't think much about the West, or because it really occupies a lot of my time. I actually don't even worry about the colonial history or even what they're doing to us or what we're doing to them. I just do. I just create. And when I see something inspirational, lots of things inspire me. Even the air, the beautiful smell. I will forget to smell the flower if I have to worry about that. And I'll stop creating if I have to worry about that. So my most, I spend a lot of time really trying to respond to how I feel at that moment. Because otherwise, you become a slave of that idea. That's what you're expected to do. You're expected to worry about it. And the more you worry about it, the more you stay away from the most beautiful things on earth. And I can't afford that. So, what I do in art and what I do in my creative process, I like to tell a story of my grandmother because she has a beautiful story. And I don't really worry about if the audience is interested in her story. Simply because you're constantly expected to justify what was done to you. So much has happened, so much terrible things have happened to the continent. But how do we respond to that? So my personal response to that is, I really don't care. I got a story to tell you. I'm going to smell this beautiful flower, and I'm going to tell you about how it smells.
I do think there is a point of, I do think there is a need to bring people in. I think when we touched upon it in Adolphus in terms of Oshogbo, for instance, how it's perceived, right? And how, in order to be able to use that knowledge and use what's there, we need to frame a way of bringing people into that conversation. I think that's really what I'm curious to understand it from that perspective.
Well, the audience is attracted to that because because there's something new. And there's somebody there.
I'm talking about I'm talking specifically about local audience in this instance,
Yes.
Nigerians who very much reject very ideas or philosophy that is sort of developed that style of architecture or the spaces that have been created as a result.
Yeah, again, the space that was created is created. If you look at I was telling you about the thumbprint. That is the story that's in it. Because it's not trying to confront anything, it's just telling you a story of the fingerprint. Because fingerprint has a lot of stories. You can turn it political, you can turn it anywhere you want to, because the fingerprint has a lot of issues. Or there's also different, our differences. We're all different because we have different fingerprints. That could be the ups and downs of life. Or what's the most story of caterpillar from the time it transformed into a butterfly. That transformation could be change, anything. It could be politics into it, or it could just be the miracle of life. How a butterfly can lay an egg and create these beautiful colors. So it just goes on and on. So I think it's a story that we're missing sometimes. It's my story. It's how I feel. And every time I am being asked to respond to all the guilt that people have imposed on others, I just don't worry about it. Because it takes away from, I'm just a little bit too greedy about my own time and my own creativity. And in order to sustain that, if I keep responding to that, that's what I'm expected to do. I'm expected to be angry. And I don't want to be angry. So this is why it attracts people, if it attracts people at all. But no consume.
Personally, like with every of my projects, it always starts with a personal point of view. What am I experiencing? Where am I coming from? Like with the mysteries or with every other project, the shrinking shells around waters, around island where I live, the mysteries with my identity as a Christian or not. And with every other project, so for me, that's the first point. I'm not really bothered about who is going to look at the work, but also, there's always a starting point for me, research. So I make it a point of view to understand other positions that have been put down regarding the work I'm doing. But I don't know that influence me, because I feel that to do any work, you have to have an understanding of what it entails at different levels, because there are different levels of every work.
Okay, well, my own intervention is coming from a slightly different angle. I think that in the world in which we live, we all have our stories. And I think it is important that we use our own voice to express our own narrative, and that is the way you represent yourselves, so that other people do not interpret who they think you are. I think that you should make yourself heard, and the most important thing about heritage is that if you look inward, I think we would see that we have a track record, of creativity, which is typified, in our customs and our traditions, in our art. And this is the kind of thing that the Osun-Oshogbo groups, the artworks, indicate. And when you point to that, that listen, we too have created very great works of art, which you can see. And these works have inspired, and continue to inspire people who are creating today. Now, my point of view is that I am not sure that if you shouted from the top of a roof that something that is white was red, you can shout all you want and make yourself awesome. It still doesn't change it from being black if it is truly black. What I'm saying therefore is that if, in point of fact, we do not have things that is worthy to be proud of, I think we would just be screwed. Please forgive my French. However, the truth is that we have many examples, great things that have been done. The art from Benin, the sculptures of the likes of Olowe, the works, Yoruba folklore is rich, our proverbs and all of that. And the works you see there is just interpretation of artists of things that come out of that. But you look at some of those sculptures, many of them, are very tall, they are big, they were created by ordinary folks. Susan Wenger was actually taught how to use cement by one of the local artists. And she contributed her knowledge and the training, in structured art. And the collaboration there is what you see today. And it is beautiful work. And if you will just go away from all these prejudices, just look at the creativity. Some of the examples that you saw in the images I put up, that then you yourself can say, listen, I come from a crowd of people who have achieved something, and that we need to just harness and embrace those things and build upon that.
Thank you very much. I think it would be good to have I think we're running a little bit behind, so if we have 10 minutes? Yeah, up to 10 minutes. Yeah, for some questions.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I'm from Osun State. I love being in the show. My mom visited here. She's from Ibeti Road, 15 minutes from Ife. And I like to, I really enjoy the images. And the mud story view that came with, it's going to be beautiful, I'm sure. Yes, grooves make me think of things. Your words have inspired me to say that being valuable in a moment, or being worthy in a moment, so cruel as to remain elusive to my grasping mind. You, in this conversation, helps me to begin the present navigation, guiding the path to a converging future, free from the prison of the blurry experience of the miracle born in the warm textures of water, sun, oil, wood, and light.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask if anyone has any questions. Can we just keep it quite short so we can get as many questions as we can? The gentleman over there.
Good evening. I've just looked at the structures up here, the sculptures now. I'm really thinking, it's easy to see how, I'm thinking more of the capitalist point of view. How to
Did you say you're a capitalist?
Yes.
Do they allow you to do it?
I'm thinking, I see the structures here, I'm thinking, what's the best way to get money out of this? That's making more sustainable, because I know people don't get things here. They can't see. It's really more sustainable. I'm generally mostly going to ask here and the better way to become more sustainable, to get more people involved.
So the question is, how do you create artistic spaces using sustainable materials? Or how do you produce? Okay, do you understand? Like, what's that?
Well, in our case, it's privately owned, so we used our own money to build it, with some help from friends. So we have a whole lot of programs that's going to make money. It has to sustain itself. Everything else, we have a huge amount of vegetable that's for sale. Of course, you're not going to make that much money with that, but they will also have a number of programs that are generating money. Even the milk we have, because we have 7 cows, we can't keep up because this is a huge demand. So there is, the idea is to make it sustainable, so you don't have to beg for money. The whole idea is how do we make it stand on its own and not beg for any kind of money to keep it going. So that was a plan from the beginning, and I think we were able to achieve that. And we also have a bakery there, which I haven't shown you all the stuff that's there. So there's continual income that's coming from all direction, and we have to do that because I've been there, I've seen what it's like to try to raise money.
Okay, yeah, my contribution to that is that using Oshogbo as an example, what we haven't done very well in Nigeria is to actively promote tourism. You know, many of you, I'm sure, you routinely go abroad, and I'm sure if we had the equivalent of Oshogbo there, you would go there. You know, but I think that if the government would just, you know, say that we are going to make it, and if you are going to promote tourism, now there are different levels. You know, the thing about tourism is that people are trying to have different experience from what they are normally accustomed to. So if we make the place open, we make it not that tedious for people to get Nigerian visa, you make sure that there is, you know, acceptable rule of law, safety to life and property. You know, if for instance, when people, if you wanted to go to Oshogbo from Lagos, it is very, very difficult to make it a day return from Lagos because of the, just the difficulty of road transportation between. Those are the kind of things that we ought to work upon. And when you promote tourism, there are so many other things that are ancillary. People require hotels, and you know, it will also create job and employment and contribute to the local economy. But people are looking for places where they can go and relax. You go to, not too far, because as the crow flies, Oshogbo is probably maybe not more than 1.5 hours, 2 hours by road, if everything works well. You can just travel there and just experience nature. You know, there are different kinds, you know, of flowers, fauna, just peace and quiet, you know, apart from the sculptures that are there. You know, so, but charity begins from home. And this is part of the effort we are making today, that you know about it. I'm hoping that many of you are sufficiently curious to try and go there and to chip in whatever you can to the efforts to try to restore and keep the place going. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, I'll do this.
I'm sorry. Just one question.
No, it's not a question, it's a contribution. On the platform, I can expect that pragmatic solutions towards what we just said actually projected here, rather than just normal talk and listening to it. But I think, what you just said, should actually focus on what we do here. And there should be structures to work that out, because that's sustainable. That's why I asked that question. I'll speak to you about that.
Thank you.
So, let me get one more question. You answer, so we just have a question. Does anybody have any other question? Okay, you just have your question.
I would like to ask, in your own point of view, would you say that the artists and the architects, in quotes, that worked in Africa in those days were looking at expressing themselves, or they were trying to cover a particular need? And as such, now that we are looking at this need that they have covered, they look aesthetically pleasing. That's number one. And as such,
one question. Just one question. Okay.
So I was going to talk about how sustainable the project in prisons and the project is. First of all, it's an art project, strictly art project. Yes, training. Like, that's why we went further to the prisons. The one for the prisons now, the idea, the future of that is, like your partner with the Nigerian prisons already, is to set up workshops, short-term workshops for inmates that are now living in the prisons. So eventually this will run within the prison authority. So, because there's budget for everything within the prison, food, they eat, everything they do. So why not add that? Because you're trying to solve a problem that will happen. They're going to come back. So, but if you empower them and help them to do something when they get out, they don't come back. So eventually the project is run by the prison and can continue to have a life of its own.
I think you had a really great question, so perhaps that's when you could speak to that.
I have to apologize. The question was not very clear to me. So can you quickly clarify it to me? Because I want to make sure that I quite understood you.
Sure.
Just a question.
So my question was, in your own view, would you say that the artists or the architects that were working in those days here in Africa were doing things because they wanted to create beautiful things, or they were trying to cover a particular need, and now when we look at them, we think that they are aesthetically pleasing? I ask this because from your point of view, you would express yourself or create things according to how you feel, and someone else will express themselves according to the social issues that are taking place. So where is the balance?
So you're referring to the old art, to the old architecture? Yeah. Okay, that's what I want to make sure. I think there are moments in life, in history, where art and architecture have been either promoted, or it is a style, or even the thing to do. And so there's been times when artists were expressing architects. The school of architecture is very new. So in the old days, since your father or your grandfather has been a builder, and then the next generation becomes a builder, or so on and so forth. So you just learn that on the job, or because you happen to be from certain parts of the family. So I think there was probably a competition of the aesthetic part of it, who can make the most beautiful out of which material. And so in that kind of competition, the most beautiful ones or the most sustainable ones remained. The rest of them are not there for too many reasons. So I think there's just a pile of reasons why we have this aesthetically beautiful buildings still standing today. It could even be to, if some anthropologists and archaeologists think that maybe they were doing it for higher beauty. Or maybe they were just doing it because they were artists. They were just being expressive. And they were just maybe even challenging, how much can this material go? How much more can I do with it? I mean, we don't know, because we don't have really a written document. We can only make assumptions, and there are hundreds of assumptions. And it depends on your political stand or your belief system. Your assumptions can go from left to right everywhere. But I think there was competition can be very dangerous in creativity, but it can also be, if it's done right, can actually create the most beautiful things.
Do we have one more question?
I have a question.
Time for one more question?
Sorry, am I allowed to have a question?
Yes.
One of the things that we were exploring in Yinka Shanbar's exhibition is materiality, and he speaks about, for example, with the wind sculptures, that he's constantly thinking about what is a sculpture and how far can the material go. So if you actually look downstairs, you'll see the latest sculptures, kind of actually the shape has changed. The idea that something that you can't see or can't even actually touch has become sculpture, which is wind. Meskerem, I remember the first time I met you, you spoke about kind of this or maybe it was Elias, the happy accident of when you actually couldn't build the building that you wanted to build. And so you discovered you were forced to work with the structure, which was the mud structure. So I'm finally getting to my question. This thing of pushing materiality, and can you speak about this, like what that has produced for you and Elias, but also about the people that were working with you, the ones that were actually the trained, I think it's in English you say called mud building structure?
Yes, we went to ask for permission, the government, to give us a building permission. And we were told, which by the way now the new policies doesn't do that anymore, but we were told at the time that the only material to get the permit was so bureaucratic. And one of the guys said in the city administration office, we can give you a renovation permit. Because the building was mud, so you can use the mud. And for me, that was like, oh my God, it was a gift. Because that's really what we wanted to do. And we were trying to see how we could challenge the government so they can allow us to build this mud. So renovation became, renovation. As you can see, it completely transformed into a work of art. So sometimes this kind of challenges can actually push you to be creative and work on because you don't have a choice. Your second question was.
I was wondering about the fact that you guys were working with these.
Oh, yeah, the people who are working. Yeah. So we actually hired people from the countryside who already know how to work with mud. And because they're so familiar with the material, when you bring them, and then they also come from the north where they learn how to read and write. So they understand the Amharic writing very well because they've learned it. And so when you give them shapes, what Elias does is actually he does the drawings and then he works with them with shapes. They get it because they're so familiar with the material. So we do have a whole bunch of young people working with Elias, creating this because they understand the material. Because it's familiar, they build their homes with that material. And also they get to appreciate it because this is something that they've been trying to stay away from. And suddenly they met an artist who's actually appreciating it and making it worldwide famous. So there's a huge amount of pride because suddenly their material is now recognized as the most important material.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to leave on a last note. And I think the influence of the Oshogbo, the art, and the creative scene, it sort of came out from a very simple process. And that process was looking at the existing techniques that were already happening in that environment, and looking at the existing history, and then using those to create something which I think we all say has stood the test of time and is useful. And I think I'll just really like just a quick last word from each of you regarding the future of artists and sculpture and where you feel for your practice that lies.
If I can go first, I think that the two examples I've used in illustrating my intervention today, the Oshogbo work at the groups was inspired by Susan Wenger, an Australian artist who came here and spent the rest of her life in Nigeria. The more recent example was inspired and created by Claudia Lakija, who was born in Gloucestershire, married to a Nigerian, but she now lives here. And while I advocate and I applaud, these examples, I think the question that I would like to pose to Nigerians is that clearly, I think these examples demonstrate that artists can really play vital roles in society, to try to architecture a space, to try to influence the rest of us and show us new ways of seeing things. But it seems as if for some curious combination of reasons that indigenous, local Nigerian artists are not as, I think, as prominent as I would like them to be in using their skills, to try, to create change in society, to influence, ways of doing things. And I'm not sure that there is enough time to explore all of this, but I think it is something that we ought to think about. And I think that I would like to see more Nigerian artists, embrace this concept. Some of the things, being Nigerian myself, is that there are some things in our culture that tend to hold back these things about a younger person not challenging somebody who is older, even when they are advocating a point of view which may not really, be the most appropriate and things like that. Like we need, and older Nigerians have got to be more open, but the younger people have also got to realize that the future belongs to them and they need to get more involved and to embrace our arts and culture and our heritage and to use that as inspiration to go and at least advocate the place of Nigerians and to themselves serve as examples that other people can look up to and be proud of. Thank you.
As an artist myself, I think we cannot overemphasize the importance of protest as an artist. Whatever your form of art is, I think it's very important to understand that maybe the works they're going to put out is from the other window. Someone has to understand what's happening in a particular environment or in this environment. So there should be many more artists doing works, protesting against things they don't understand or things they feel are wrong, at least where they are located in their own environment, the immediate environment. I think that way we can begin to positively make changes, not just talk about it, but do works that make impact, create structures around the art in our own environment.
And I think that's where, one of the things you said is that you're passionate about just doing. So I think it'd be good to have fun doing it for you.
Yeah. No, I'm a doer. I make things. So I take action. So that's why. But for the question about young people and the future, I'm so encouraged more than ever with young people today. Because I am hearing incredible stories. I see a lot of passion. They come to us in large number. There's like a renewed kind of energy about trying to understand what to do with the environment. I think it's worrying them, and I think my previous generation and myself and all of us have given them something that's not right, and they know it. And they're more than eager to change that. So there's the number of young people who come to us, and the volunteers like never before. So I think I'm very optimistic about the future. But again, leadership is very important. And how do you mobilize this energy and keep it moving? It's very positive.
Again, I'd just like to thank everybody here on the panel. Please, I think there's a good round of applause. And that will be the end of the Artex Talk. Ms. over to you.
I'm just going to say one little comment from somebody who was, I didn't realize that there was another room, but somebody says for you, Meskerem Zoma Museum, would you take a visitor or resident artist from Nigeria? Because I'm very interested in vernacular architecture and would like to have one here. How can I come and learn from your space or your example?
Get my email, write to me, and we'll talk. I'm more than happy to have you there.
So on that note, I would like to say thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoyed this session. I'm going to hand over to Miss Tokini Peterside from Artex, our fair director.
Thank you guys. Thank you very, very much for today. Thank you to all of you who are still here in the room. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our moderator. Thank you to Mr. It really has been quite incredible executing this third edition of Artex Lagos. There are so many people who have been instrumental in what we've done. From the sponsors who have supported, to the galleries who have come from here, the artists who have come with their galleries, and to all of you who have come as guests. Guests from out of town, guests from all over the world. We are so grateful to have you with us. It's always just nice to say a few closing words before the end of the fair. We don't organize a formal closing ceremony, so we tend to just tack on to the last talk of the day instead of doing something formal. Artex, as you know, is only 3 years old. We are but a toddler, but we're a toddler that people are now trying to turn into a giant. So we're trying to walk and we're running and we're trying to sprint. So we look forward to hearing back from you in terms of your feedback, things that you think you would like to see done differently next year, because we're consistently trying to improve. In fact, I'll ask a little question. What did you think about the tickets and the seat numbers and all of that? I don't know if for some of you it was useful compared to last year. We're always trying to improve what we do. Before you go, I wanted to just invite one of our sponsors, because there was a very special program that we ran this year, which was that with our sponsor Napjets, we ran a collector's raffle whereby every single buyer of an artwork got entered into a draw to win a private jet flight. Someone just asked, did you buy a work and not get a car? They got entered into a draw to win a private jet flight. So I'm going to call up Ms. Benny Abudu, who's the VP of Marketing of Anabjets. She's not going to tell you the name of the buyer. She's going to tell you the name of the artwork that the buyer bought. We just do this publicly so that people know that somebody will actually get this prize and that we didn't just pocket it and go on the flight ourselves. So Benny, please come up. It will only take 1 minute of your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the winner of the Anabjet Collector's Raffle, the artwork purchased is La Lettres, and the artist's name is Abodie. So the owner of
so the purchaser of the Abodie artwork, which was bought from Barcelona by Out of Africa Gallery, is the winner of the Anabjet Collector's Raffle. Yes. So on that note, we will be declaring the 2018 edition of Artex Lagos as formally closed. We're really excited for the future. Stay tuned for future changes. We are always trying to grow. We are always trying to get better. And as I said, if you have anything you want to share with us, things you spotted, things you think could be greater, and things you think could be better, we would love to hear from you. Thank you once again. Thank you for your time. And have a lovely evening. We will see you again next year. First weekend in November. We are trying to always do that. So yeah, look out for us. We'll be in touch with you. Thank you so much.